nerds, what's up? Today I'm excited to talk about Ken Liu's new release, All That We See or Seem. Now, as you guys know, Ken Liu is one of my very favorite authors, and I was so excited when Saga Press sent me this book early as an ARC, and I actually read it a little bit ago, but I was waiting to post my review because I had this dream that Saga Press actually sent me a couple of other books in the last few months, and we'll talk about that later, that are going to be new releases in October and November. And my idea was I'll review them all together and do a nice little video of new reviews. I just had a busy September. I got sick really bad, which you can still hear in my voice. So I'm sorry, my voice is like very squeaky right now. And it didn't happen. So I really wanted to come on here and talk about this because if you're watching this, the book was released yesterday. So it is currently available right now. And so if you're interested after my review, you should definitely go get it. So All That We See or Seem is definitely a change of pace from other Ken Liu stuff if you have previously been a fan of the Dandelion Dynasty like me. This is a sci-fi focused and much more of like a thriller and fast-paced plot-driven novel. It follows a character named Julia Z, and she is like an expert hacker since she was younger, and it follows how she is trying to help a husband track down his wife, who is famous for being like a dream creator. This is in a future where AI is super prevalent and that there are a lot of different virtual reality kind of moments. And she was a dream weaver, which means she would take auditoriums full of people and weave them into these special narratives where they could be connected to themselves and others around them. And so it's kind of a thriller, fast-paced novel based on her helping out this husband track down his wife. If you have read The Paper Menagerie by Ken Liu, which, as you guys know, is one of my favorite books of all time, I force everybody to read it. That's one of his collections of short stories. Think of this book a lot more similar to his more plot-based sci-fi ones in that novel, kind of like The Perfect Match or The Regular, and not so much like The Paper Menagerie or other short stories in there. So I ended up rating this book a 3, so it was just kind of average for me. I definitely didn't connect with it as much as the Dandelion Dynasty or the Paper Menagerie, and I think that's probably because I am really in a moment of character-driven narratives, and this novel is definitely more plot-focused. And so I think some people are going to really like that about it. Like, I think some people who maybe bounce off of Ken's slower works may actually enjoy this more. I've seen it compared a lot to Blake Crouch. Now, I've only read one Blake Crouch, which was Dark Matter, and I also gave Dark Matter a 3. And like a ton of people love that book, but for me, I actually think some of the same reasons I didn't love Dark Matter are the same reasons that this one was only okay for me. So I think that's funny. I think it's definitely like a reading style. The first thing is like, I do think the novel had some really interesting ideas about AI, and particularly like who owns art and how does the artist interact and feel about their own art. And those are questions I am super naturally curious about. So seeing some of those things through Liu's lens was super fascinating. And in fact, I marked some really quite poignant thoughts, but I think those were more in the background, and particularly I felt that they weren't explored necessarily through the plot itself. They were kind of separate. So sometimes the main character would be ruminating on these things, and I'd be super interested on that angle, but the plot itself didn't necessarily support those explorations. I hope that makes sense. Whereas I feel like a lot of Liu's other work, it is the plot that kind of explores the deeper themes, whereas this time I think the deeper themes were more just explored through inner thought. I hope I'm making sense with that. So obviously the book title is a reference to the Edgar Allan Poe poem, All That We See or Seem is But a Dream Within a Dream. And I love that as an inspiration for this because I reread the poem and it was like, oh yes, this is exactly thematically what this book is going for, particularly when we talk about the missing wife. Like Ellie's entire story, that she is about weaving dreams for others, and what is the dream she's weaved for herself, I feel like fits so thematically, and I really loved that idea. Again, I just wish it was explored more within the narrative itself rather than kind of as a blanket overhead. One of my biggest complaints actually about the novel that I think maybe hurt it more for me than it being just plot driven was the way that science was used within the novel. It felt a lot, the AI usage felt a lot like magic, and I couldn't help but keep thinking of the Sanderson laws of magic, which I mostly subscribe to. Obviously, there's always things that can be broken, but he talks about the softer the magic system, the less it can solve problems in the narrative, or else it becomes too like, oh, any problem can be solved. And the harder the magic is, the easier it is for magic to solve problems. And he always talks about if you have a soft magic system, magic needs to cause problems as much as it solves problems. And I think that's just the easiest way to talk about the tech in this novel, because I felt like Julia could never fail. And it just always felt like she was always going to have the tech to do whatever she needed. And it ended up feeling like magic because she could always do it. And so that took a lot of the tension out of the novel. And so when you have a plot-based novel, I kind of needed that tension, but I never doubted. But at the same time, I didn't feel like the thematic exploration was enough that didn't matter to me. So I think that's like pretty much the main complaint I have. And especially because Julia has such a rich background that I thought was really well done as a character. I just wish it could have been explored maybe in slightly different ways. One of the most interesting things is I found out that this was actually a novella that was expanded into a full novel. I read that at the end. I can't remember if it was in the foreword or like in after the acknowledgements. And I thought that was super interesting because I felt that while I was reading it, not knowing that, because to me, it kind of felt like 3 separate sections. Now, obviously books all the time have 3 acts, but this felt very separate. And recently I read Tough Voyaging by George R.R. Martin. And if you're unfamiliar with Tough Voyaging, it is a collection, I think of 5 or 6 short stories or novellas. I don't know, whatever. I don't know the exact word count difference, that are all together, and they all follow the same character, and they're all somewhat related. And over the entire novel of these novellas that have been put together, it creates a full narrative. And I almost wish that's how All That We See or Seem was structured, because I can clearly see like Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3, and they are related, but they're kind of different enough that it was jarring as a full narrative. Like I almost wanted to stuck like, here is Julia Z part 1. I don't want to spoil what each part is. Here is Julia Z part 2. And here is like, after that kind of thing concludes, here's part 3 where she's doing this other thing. I think that would have actually worked more for me to give it more of a through line in the novel, because I do kind of still feel the novella-ish part of this. Like I feel like if this had been a novella, I would have loved it more, because in a novella, I'm not thinking as much about like a character always succeeding, or you need some plot-based elements while you explore some thematic elements. So I think it suffers a little bit from that. These are things like I could see people just not caring about at all. Like when I was reading, I was like, oh, definitely like someone who wants a sci-fi thriller is probably going to really enjoy this novel, for like literally all the reasons I just said that I had a problem with it. So I'd be really curious about those who bounced off Dandelion Dynasty, if this would be more their speed. I know there's going to be more Julia Z novels, and I actually am very curious to read them because I really like the character. And so I'm hoping that if it keeps going on this thematic element, that we get a little bit more exploration about art and who owns art through the narrative. So I'll definitely read the next one. It was kind of one of those ones where like it didn't quite work for me, but I'm definitely curious to try again. And obviously because it's like also one of my favorite authors, so I'm always going to try again. But yep. That's if I'd love to know, since it's out, if any of you just like got it right away, what you thought of it. If you've already read it, if you're going to pick it up, please let me know in the comments below. And just like as a future, if you're curious what else Saga Press sent me, they sent me We Are Legion, the Bobiverse, which I know has been previously published. I think this is just its first time being traditionally published. You can correct me if I'm wrong. So I'm currently in the middle of that. I know several of you have wanted me to read that. So you're welcome. And then the other thing they sent me, I know people are going to be so happy about, is they actually sent me The Strength of the Few, which is the second book after The Will of the Many. And I felt so guilty that Saga Press sent me this book because I have not read Will of the Many yet, despite the fact that my husband and other people in my real life have told me it's really good. And so many people have messaged me wanting me to read it. But the good news is that like I felt so guilty about Saga Press sending me that book when I hadn't read the first one that I have started it. I have started it right now, and I'm hoping to read both before The Strength of the Few comes out. So if you're one of those people who have been super excited for me to read it, stay tuned. Your dream is coming true. As always, if you like these kind of reviews or if you like deep dives, please like and subscribe. That's the best way to support me. If you want to see what I'm currently reading or other nerdy rants, you can check me out on Instagram at bookborn.reviews. And hopefully next time, I'll have my full voice. Okay, bye.